challenges that we face in inflammatory arthritis. What are we referring to by inflammatory arthritis? It is basically rheumatoids, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis patients, those patients with spondyloarthropathies, which includes ankylosing spondylitis. So the problems we specifically face are that they involve multiple organ systems, so we will obviously need the support of our colleagues from other departments and non-surgical departments as well. Now, we know from these authors that there is an increased risk of infection in these knees as well as an increased 90-day mortality rate. There are certain aspects of the pathophysiology which are of particular concern to us. The cytokines and the inflammatory mediators reside in the inflamed synovium, and these can activate the rank L, via rank L upregulation. They can increase osteoclastogenesis, which leads to bone resorption and excessive ligament laxity. So some of these patients may have rather severe deformities which are not commonly seen in osteoarthritis, and some bizarre deformities involving multiple joints as well. We also need to worry about the spine, especially because some of these patients are prone to have lax spines, especially the C1, C2 articulation, which is prone to disruption in rheumatoid arthritis. It may present as instability, basilar invagination, or a subaxial subluxation. The anesthesiologist would need to be warned about this, obviously, because anesthesiologists love to have a flexed spine when they're doing it, giving a spinal, and quite often it is the anesthetic technician who tends to hyperflex the neck in order to give a better approach to the anesthesiologist. Now, a C-spine radiograph in the lateral flexion and extension views would obviously be beneficial. One will have to take an MRI of the cervical spine to make sure we're not missing cervical cord myelopathy, which can be a problem with these patients. Now, lesions of the skin are common in some of these patients. The current recommendation is that incising these lesions is okay. However, if they are active lesions, our concern is they may harbor infection. So the recommendation would be obviously to treat them medically, get the lesions more appropriate, and then under control, and then go ahead and operate through them if you can't avoid going around them, if you can't go around them. Now, so some of these patients can have excessive ligament laxities. This video is not playing. Which would obviously mean if that this video is not playing. So which would obviously mean that if it is excessively lax, it will have to be, oh, it's playing. Which would obviously mean that you will have to go in for some kind of constraint, especially if it is the medial, the hinge would be your choice. Now, in the hips, because of the excessive laxity that you see in these patients, there are higher rates of dislocation, which may need the use of larger sized heads. You may probably, in certain specific cases, you may need to have the option of dual mobility available, just to make sure you don't come out with an unstable hip. Osteoporosis is a problem in these patients. The pathophysiology of osteoporosis is at least two. One is the osteoclastogenesis that we've already seen, and the other is the medications, which includes steroids, which these patients invariably are on, which progress to osteoporosis. And managing osteoporosis will obviously mean at least keeping stems ready and not hesitating to use them when you're worried about bone being too soft operatively. Now, these are perhaps knees where you would like to stick to cemented implants because uncemented implants may have an issue. Now, CR versus PS, the logic of the argument has been that if you're using CR with the PCL attached, can come off, leading to late onset instability. That's debatable, as Dr. Ashok Rajgopal just mentioned, that it doesn't really make a difference. Preferably avoid unicondylar knees in rheumatoids for at least two reasons. One, they're often osteoporotic, and number two, these are cases where the disease pathology invariably progresses over time to involve other parts of the knee as well. Protrusio is a common problem in rheumatoid hips, so one may have to be prepared to reconstruct the medial wall and keep multi-hole cuts available. Now, while operating, plan to do a partial synoviectomy to minimize postoperative effusions and inflammatory pain. Resurfacing versus non-resurfacing patella, the debate never ends, but perhaps it makes no difference. There are higher rates of infections in these patients. These are patients where probably, although there may not be much evidence for it, I would like to use a dose of teicoplanin preoperatively. These patients invariably have thin, attenuated skin, and so wound healing is an issue. Handle these soft tissues with the care they deserve. There is a risk of periprosthetic fractures, so post-operatively, make sure you treat the osteoporosis if you see it. There is a higher risk of deep vein thrombosis in these patients. So these are patients where if you are an aspirin person, you would like to use something other than aspirin, including the low molecular weights. Now coming to the elephant in the room, the management of the perioperative management of the DMARDs. Essentially, DMARDs are of three types: the conventional synthetic DMARDs, the biological DMARDs, and the tissue-specific targeted synthetic DMARDs. Now, we as orthopods have an instinct to withdraw these DMARDs because they are immune suppressors and we are worried about infections. So let us look at what the physicians say about it. This is the Australian recommendation from physicians, which says continue conventional synthetic DMARDs like methotrexate, cilozapirin, hydroxychloroquine perioperatively. They also give a conditional recommendation against routinely withdrawing the biological DMARDs, but withdraw in those cases where you are worried about a high risk of infection. But when it comes to the targeted synthetic DMARDs, which includes the baricitinib and tofactinib, stop them. However, if you decide to stop them, for most biological DMARDs, withhold for at least one dosing cycle prior to surgery, that is planned for surgery, approximately the time of the subsequent dose. For instance, if you're doing a 1 monthly dose, aim for surgery in the 5th week after the last injection. However, for rituximab, at least 3 months after the previous dose. For the JAK inhibitors, which include tofactinib, stop treatment at least 7 days before surgery. Methotrexate, 1 to 2 weeks after the second most recent dose. Leflunomide, 7 days before the surgery. Thank you.